Sure.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for joining us quite late, I guess, your time. Was it
Yeah,
early?
that's all right. It's midnight right now, but yeah, it's totally fine. I'm super excited to be here today.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. And Kobe, good to see you're with us as well.
Hey, good to see everyone.
Okay, we've got Denver in the house. Nice. Yeah, well, thanks for joining. So today's call, as you've seen on the stage event and the info that we've shared around that, we'll be doing basically three big things today. We'll be handing it over to Tyler to kind of share a bit of his experience and then also like thoughts about PowerSync as it relates to kind of Flutter development, Supabase development. We then have Kobe, who is working on a chat app, kind of as a hello world example of how to get started with Supabase and PowerSync when using Flutter. And he'll be taking us through that. That'll probably be the biggest part of this call. Will be him, showing us the kind of walkthrough of the important aspects of developing with PowerSync and how to get that offline first architecture set up. And then we have Herman here as well. So Herman is part of the PowerSync community. We asked Herman to look into building a Trello clone as an example of a more sophisticated application that's built on Flutter and is offline first. So Herman has been working on that for the last few weeks, and yeah, very excited to see him kind of talk through that. We're probably not going to do a full kind of walkthrough of how that application works, and more focus on the kind of mental model. As a Flutter developer, what is the mental model that you need to kind of or what's a helpful mental model of thinking about like using PowerSync when that is your kind of data layer or part of your data layer, and then also just showing some of what he's put together. Both the chat app and the Trello clone, the code bases for that will be made available by us. So anyone in the audience that's listening in and wants to see how that has been put together, it'll be very easy to kind of clone that and try it out yourself. So that's what we've got planned for today. Hopefully the demo gods are on our side. We'll see how it goes. But let's kick it off. So Tyler, maybe you can start maybe just by giving us a bit of background on your role at Supabase, some of your background as a developer, and then kind of go into what you've seen about PowerSync so far and what your impressions are.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Again, hi everyone. I'm super excited to be here. I am Tyler, and I'm a Flutter developer here at Supabase. So yeah, my impression with PowerSync and a little bit of background about offline support and Supabase. So Supabase is probably most well known with the phrase open source Firebase alternative, right? And those who know what Firebase is, Firebase comes by default automatic offline support. So if you build an app using Firebase, your app will more or less function with a spotty internet connection or maybe no internet connection at all. And because Supabase, we say that we are open source Firebase alternative, a lot of the developers actually assume that Supabase will have some kind of offline caching capabilities. But unfortunately, that is not the case currently. Supabase does require internet connection to properly function, and we do not have any caching capabilities. And yeah, if you go to our GitHub discussion page, so if you go to the Supabase's GitHub repo, and GitHub discussion page is where users can post feature requests to us. And right there in the list of feature requests, offline support is way up there at the very top, actually. It is the top most requested feature. But yeah, offline support has a lot of thought things about it, and because of that, we haven't got around to implementing it. at Supabase. And until now, we've always told developers when they come at us and say, hey, I want to build an app with offline capabilities, we always would recommend users going the third-party integration route. And we've had awesome tools like Watermelon DB in the past, but the key thing is a lot of those third-party tools were focused on JavaScript project. And obviously, I'm a Flutter developer. I love developing Flutter apps, and we really didn't have a reliable third-party tools for Flutter. So I personally have been recommending Hydrated Block, which more or less gives you a little bit of caching, but it's only for read only kind of case, and it doesn't really support writes, or it has a lot of limitation. And yeah, so personally, I am super excited that we are getting to get it with the PowerSync to be able to fully truly provide the offline first experience for our Flutter developers. So yeah, those are some backgrounds of Supabase and Flutter developers and offline support.
Great. Yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. And it's interesting what you mentioned about the limitations of like hydrated block and also even of Firebase's caching approach, because that's really the reason why we started looking at the architecture that PowerSync supports, where you don't only have a cache on device but a full database that you can query against, and that your users are going to have an experience that their app is kind of always available, so they don't have to worry about whether they're actually online or offline, which is something that I think users have stopped kind of expecting, right? They don't actually think about, well, will I be able to access the data on this app? It's more likely the case that they happen to be in a situation where either they're offline, or as we heard yesterday from the folks over at Trash Blitz, they have like intermittent connectivity, which kind of like breaks the caching as like a local data store. That's less of a solution when your device it thinks it's online, but it actually doesn't have enough connectivity to do the data transfer that's necessary. So yeah, Tyler, I think we're very excited to be working with Supabase as well. For everyone that's listening in that might not know, PowerSync is actually a very mature product in terms of the sync that it enables. It's been baked into the Journey Apps platform, and Journey Apps is the company behind PowerSync, which has been in use for over 10 years. And in that time, we've had no data loss, right? So as a developer, I think that's probably one of the most important things that you're thinking about when you're setting up your app and your architecture is, well, will this actually result in data loss? Will I be able to see how the data has moved, and will I be able to like assure the users that the data won't be lost? And that's a big thing that we pride ourselves on, and spitting PowerSync out now as a standalone product that can be connected to a bunch of kind of backend databases or and different front end and frameworks and tools. We started out looking at, well, Supabase sets up a very nice way for developers to quickly get a backend database and even more than that set up. And then on the app development framework side, Flutter was an obvious choice. At least for us, we had a few requests for that, so that kind of prioritized our Flutter support, and the use of that has been good so far. Like we spoke with, I mentioned Trash Blitz, who have been using PowerSync in production at the cleanup operation that they did at Yosemite National Park, which is obviously also fairly offline. So that's kind of the background of where PowerSync comes from as well, and I do think it's a great partnership and integration to have with Supabase. So very excited to have you here, and also, yeah, as we go through sharing, in the various sections that we've prepared for today, feel free also to jump in with your questions. I think having the perspective of someone, or someone with a Supabase perspective on this call is definitely valuable for the audience.
Yeah, silly. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, then I think, Kobe, we can hand over to you. So as I mentioned, Kobe will do a walkthrough of how to create a Hello World app. But I think we've gone a bit more complicated in terms of app functionality, although it might be easier from a developer perspectives because we've built off of the chat app that is the Supabase example for Flutter development. Kobe.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. Yeah, so Tyler actually went back into the archives and found your chat app tutorial from last
nice.
year.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't sure if there was a repo available for that, but
I
probably be
believe we.
useful. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll share my screen because I think, I'll be showing some goodies and stuff throughout the session.
Sweet.
I did actually make like a template repo so that, if anyone wants to follow along. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. We decided to use this chat app as kind of a starting point. It's, I think, a fantastic starting point. It's a simple two-way chat application. And this tutorial, this write-up is really good. And so the app has a very straightforward schema, just two tables, messages and profiles, which like users. And yeah, we started here. And for today's session, I'll be just walking you through what it would be like to enable offline mode for this app. Because as it stands today, if you run this app and you go offline, it's not built to be used in that way. And so yeah, you can get started. We made this available kind of like as a template in case people wanted to start coding. And so here really you'll see all of the code from your app. The register page and the chat page, all of the code is here. And so I think in terms of implementing offline using PowerSync, there are pretty much two steps. The first is implementing the cloud service, and the second is making code changes to app. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these bullets. I think it's going to be much easier just looking at what's actually involved. I think one of the best places to go to is on the PowerSync docs site. We have Supabase and PowerSync kind of like integration guide. And I think the best thing really to look at here is this picture. Pictures like this make me quite happy, and it really helps me understand what's going on. So obviously you've got your Supabase project with a Postgres database, and we use the write-ahead log as a publication to propagate changes to the PowerSync cloud. The PowerSync cloud applies what's called sync rules, which I'll get into in a bit. But they're basically like declarative SQL-based ways to split up your data so that you don't have to sync your entire Postgres database to your end users, because you obviously want to partition your data in different ways. And then on the client side, you obviously install the PowerSync SDK. So that's pretty straightforward, Flutter pub add PowerSync. You then kind of implement a local schema, which is the view into the SQLite database. It's just straight up SQLite. You can connect to it directly if you want, but it is kind of managed by PowerSync. So we do provide some friendly APIs to to work with that on-device data. And so, yeah, you implement your local schema, which is what kind of your app code can like its view into the data, so to speak. We do kind of recommend implementing some models, which can give you a bit of a more like ORM feel on the Flutter side. You can, we've seen some SQL junkies just like write SQL. But yeah, it is recommended to implement some of those like model helpers, if you want to call them that. We actually had someone from the community, from the Trash Blitz project. He wrote a Python script to auto-generate these models from the Postgres schema. So yeah, we can share that too. That certainly saves some time. Then there are really two main things to implement in your app code. The one is just wiring up the auth. We use JWTs, and so the auth is pretty straightforward. We're kind of just reusing your Supabase auth token, and automatically validating users against the PowerSync service so that only authenticated users can download data. So that's the first part, is the auth, and I'll take you through the code for that. And then the second part is implementing how you want to upload your data. But this is a pretty straightforward approach, but you can also customize things. But I'll show you that as well. So I think that takes care of the plumbing. And then once you've done that, the last thing to do is to go through your app code on the UI side specifically. And wherever you were in the past, using the Supabase Flutter SDK to, hydrate the UI or persist changes back to Postgres, you kind of rip those out and replace them with SDK calls to the PowerSync SDK. So where in the past, you might populate a list with an API call to Supabase, now you're populating your list with a SQL call against the local SQL database. Yeah. And those are pretty much the steps that are needed. Yeah, is that all?
Sounds really amazing. Yeah.
Is that kind of clear, Tyler? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is very clear, and I'm keen to hear more about how. Personally, I'm keen to hear more about how row-level security works together with PowerSync. But I'm sure we're gonna have a section about that as well. So yeah, personally, really excited.
Cool. Yeah. So that ties in with the sync rules that you define. And so maybe we can drill in a bit into the sync rules there. What are sync rules? Well, let's if you go to PowerSync's website and you sign up, you get taken to our dashboard. And you get placed into this blank environment. And the first thing you do is you create an instance of that sync service. You can adjust your region. We actually have a couple of regions, but we're just showing US and EU in the UI for now. And then you enable Supabase auth. And then you wire up your connection to Supabase. Over here, you go to project settings, database, URI, grab your database URI, and then you paste that in there. Once you've done that, there's a YAML file here, and this is your sync rules definition. And so what you implement here are SQL statements to define kind of the data you can download. And there are kind of really two types of rules. There are global rules, which specify like global data buckets that you want to sync to all your users. So this could perhaps be from, like some reference table, like all customers. You just want everyone to have a list of customers.
Would it be
Yeah.
okay if we zoom in a bit? It's that will make
Sure.
it easier to
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Thank you. Oh yeah, that's so much better. Thank you so much.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. And then the second style of sync rule is like you can define like by user. And how these work is they take a user parameter, which is a user ID, and then you can use that user ID to further filter your buckets. And I think probably in terms of how they interplay with row level security, they do play in conjunction. We have like documented a bunch of the use cases here. But RLS is always like the authoritative set of security rules. So, this is not a replacement for RLS. And so, I think the important thing to also mention is that sync rules are applied for data downloads, not for uploads. So I think, generally the sync rules will kind of mirror your RLS. I think,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome to hear. That's gonna make things easier. And I was actually earlier playing around with some of the example apps that you guys have put together, and I noticed one thing with the sync rules is that in all the sync rules, it seems like there was never a limit clause in the sync rules. And I was wondering if you have, for example, a chat app and you have a massive chat history, millions of data. And in the sync rules, I didn't see any limit clause, but does PowerSync have some kind of magic, like automatically just fetches the relevant data for the local caching, or how does that work?
So what you define in your sync rules is a SQL query, and all the rows returned by the query are downloaded to the device.
I see. So it is recommended to have some kind of limit and order clause then.
Yeah, totally. And
That
we
makes
support
sense, yeah.
lots of, you can have like you can have a where clause in there, let's say, to only download, within a date range, or you could have a where clause to filter by a Boolean field or whatever. But yeah.
Right. All makes sense. Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Sure thing. Yeah. Yeah. So really, once you've defined your sync rules, you're done with the PowerSync setup side of things. So if we go back to this picture, you really need to define your connection to Supabase, which is very straightforward, and then you define your sync rules, and then you're done. And then you can move to the Flutter side of your implementation.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've got my trusty editor here, and this is the chat app. This is the version. So what we did was we published two things. The one is that template, which is kind of just the starting point based on your tutorial from last year. But there's another repo which is, has got one commit in it, which is implementing PowerSync. And this shows you all of the changes required to go from your chat app tutorial to an offline capable app. So people can go and review this commit. It's really not that big. And like I mentioned, one of the first things to do is to define your schema. And that's like PowerSync kind of needs this for subsequent SQL calls. And so this defines the kind of app level view into the SQLite database, because the actual table names in SQLite are a bit low level and have some system prefixes and stuff like that. And so using this, you can just create like a very friendly view for the app, for your app code. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And actually, one question come to my mind looking at this as well. So what would happen if the database structure changes and you need to add a column? I would assume that you would also modify this file, but would PowerSync automatically take care of migrations or database structure change somehow in the background?
Yeah, excellent question. I can see you've got some scars on the back. And yeah, so additive changes are no problem at all. And we do also support more destructive schema changes. And we actually got all of those documented in our docs. Sorry, I could zoom in a bit more again. So for additive changes, it's very simple. The big thing is if your sync rules are like select star, then you're good. Then your new column that you've added in Postgres will sync down. And then you can add that into your schema file. Yes, as an additional column. Yeah.
Simple. I love it.
Yeah. And then we do also support, renaming tables, deleting tables, all the other use cases. And those are all documented on our docs site.
Nice. That is amazing to hear.
Cool. Yeah, good question. We do also support indexes here. So the table constructor takes a name, then a list of columns, and then you can have indexes. So you can define client-side indexes for your on-device SQLite database for more aggressive. Like if you've got like 1 million rows in your SQLite database on your device, then it's recommended to add indexes.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So I mentioned that it's optional to implement to extend your models, but it is kind of recommended. So for the chat app, we had a message model, which really just had the content of the chat message, when it was created, who created it, the profile ID, and then there was this calculated is mine Boolean, which gets used, by the UI to show, the chat bubbles on the left and the right, like who's the message from. And really the one extension that we do is you can implement like a from row method where instead of injecting this map, you can inject a SQLite row and instantiate a message object directly from a SQLite row. And then you can use that. So here's the stream. Here's an example of a stream, and that uses. So DB is your magic like global handler to a PowerSync database object, which I'll get into a little bit. And it's got a couple of methods that you'll use. It's got watch, and basically what watch does is watch will re-execute this query whenever data has changed. So whenever new data has downloaded from the server, it'll re-execute this query. And what that means is we can implement kind of the same stream paradigm that you had in your initial tutorial app.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, by using PowerSync, it sounds like you pretty much automatically get real-time as well, on top of not just REST API calls, but real-time database changes subscription is automatically embedded within PowerSync. Is that correct?
That's correct. I haven't,
That is,
looked at the real-time stuff specifically. I might have to ask Ralph there, but you can for sure, I know, stream data in real time. Yeah.
right. So when the device is connected and online, you pretty much get real-time data right there.
Correct.
That is very amazing. That is very impressive.
Yeah. Thanks. On behalf of the team. But yeah, so I think that's a good point, is when whether your device is online or offline, it seamlessly switches in the background. So if you're online, it'll stream those changes in. If you're offline, the stream stops, but the user can just carry on using the app. And then there's another method on that which is, I think the two big ones in addition that developers will use is get. Get returns a single row from the database, and so that it executes as a read-only query and returns a single result. And then there's get all, and then get all will return a result set. And so those are, the R in CRUD will be get and get all and watch. And then the other methods we have are execute, where you can mutate your data locally. So that's for, inserts, updates, deletes. Those can all get pushed into execute. And there is also execute batch for larger volume use cases. But yeah, so these really are the three kind of like model extensions that we would recommend, so that elsewhere in your Flutter code, it's got a bit more of that like object-oriented feel, and you don't have like these SQL statements littered in your UI. You're just kind of like calling these methods. Yeah.
Yeah, that really makes sense, and that is lovely. I just have another question about execute. Does execute method support transactions? So, for example, if you want to insert two data, maybe related data at the same time in the database, would that be possible using this method?
That is possible using this method. I'd have to go look at the specifics. But yeah, we do have a lot of support for transactions.
Wow, that is really impressive. I'm really seeing that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, was it Herman?
Yes, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt the flow. I can show an example of transaction later in the Trello.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
Just remind me.
Nice.
Will do. Excellent.
Sweet.
Cool.
Yeah, I can see that really PowerSync is really bulletproof. Like every single kind of interaction that you might have with the database, it's got covered and real time is baked in, which is really, really amazing. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So similar kind of thing for profile. The from row in addition to the from map. Here's an example of the get call, where we're passing in a string from like the UI code, and then using parameterized SQL to go and return that single result back to the UI. Then the next thing is it does get at this point, the recommendation is use our demo app that we've published. We're not fully assimilated into like the ChatGPT mastermind yet, so you can't just outsource this section. But there are the real big thing that you want to do is you have to implement a Supabase connector. And if you recall, in that diagram, this is a client-side class which is responsible for authentication, and it's also responsible for like what to do when you've got this upload queue over here. If you change your data, as creating objects, deleting objects, all of those data operations go into an upload queue, and you can customize what should happen with that upload queue. The SDK is like a little bit agnostic there, because what we, a big design philosophy for us at PowerSync is we want to reuse whatever developers have in place for uploading. So we don't want to bypass any business logic or anything like that. So that's why the SDK accepts this upload data callback, and the SDK will continually try to upload the data. And so that gives developers a lot of flexibility in terms of and control to make sure that the data coming back into their Postgres is clean, free of errors, all of that kind of stuff. So this connector really has two methods that you should care about: upload data and fetch credentials. Fetch credentials is pretty straightforward. You just check if you have a Supabase session. If you do, extract the token, and then you return a set of credentials, which are an endpoint, which you get from your PowerSync UI. It's pretty straightforward. You go to your instance. Not there. Oh yeah, this is my new environment over here. I don't think I didn't deploy one yet, but anyway, you right click on your instance, you click edit instance, and there's a URL that shows up over here. I just haven't deployed this one yet. So you copy that URL in, and then you paste it in here. And that is that's all you need to do for auth. So yeah, the SDK will use this method to get an auth token, both for uploading and downloading. In terms of uploading, things are a bit interesting here. Basic, but again, I think our recommendation is go to our demo app, use this code as is, but essentially you can get a batch of changes within a transaction. And so this is from that FIFO upload queue I mentioned earlier. You can then get a Postgres handle on the Postgres API. You can iterate through every transaction in that list, every operation inside the transaction. And then it's really just a mapping. We've got the three. We've got puts, patches, and deletes. Puts will map to upserts in Supabase. Patch will match to update, and delete maps to delete. And then you can complete your transaction. If something has failed, our demo app has a lot more info here in terms of what to do on a failure and how to handle the transaction. But typically it's indicative of like a bug in the UI or something. And the recommendation is to, over here in this code, write those failed operations into like a failure table, and then to still complete the transaction. Because if this transaction doesn't complete, it'll just loop forever and block the remaining the upload of the remaining items. But anyway, things get a bit more technical, and we're always on our Discord. But it is kind of important to think about these error cases. And our demo app has like quite some pretty good comments on what to do in those scenarios. All right. Yeah, so that really is the, like I mentioned, we've got some pretty good example code of what to do for that Supabase connector. Once you've got the connector, the last thing you do is call db.connect, and you inject the connector. And then the SDK is up and running. It's going to be, streaming downloads, uploading data. So this is kind of the endpoint. Once you've called db.connect and you've injected your connector, the setup is done for the SDK. And then the last step before we pause for Q&A and hand over to Herman and stuff would be to wire up things in your UI. So if we switch to our Flutter UI, I believe there's like a send button in here. This was, to send the message. That calls submit message, and here I think previously it would call the Supabase from messages, insert, pass in the data. Here we're simply just wiring it up to that extension to the model that we did earlier over here, that create method. And so typically what you can do is almost like just find for all usages of the Supabase API in your UI, and then wire those up to the model extension methods that you implemented.
Beautiful.
And yeah, then you're done, and your code should just work the first time.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Wow. That is amazing. Wow.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
thanks, Kobe.
yeah.
Sorry,
You're
Kobe.
welcome. No, I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting, Tyler. So, comparing this to some of the other, tools, third-party tools that you've seen before. Yeah, what are your impressions?
Yeah, one thing I want to point out is PowerSync is a complete tool, right? So it already has a server for you, and you just go to PowerSync website and just sign up, and then pretty much you do all the setup and you're good to go. Whereas some other tools might require some additional infrastructure that you have to bring it in. So I think this is great. Generally, including me, Flutter developers tend to be a bit lazy when it comes to that kind of back-end infrastructure. I personally would not be happy with managing my own infrastructure. That's why I love tools like Supabase, and I think PowerSync would be PowerSync is on board in that kind of sense. So yeah, I'm loving it.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Making it easy. That's not to say that there won't be other ways to kind of host the service yourself in future. I think that's also a category of developer that we want to cater for. But yeah, as it stands, it's pretty nice that you can kind of sign up, deploy your instance by clicking a button, and then wire it up in your app, and you're good to go. And yeah, I think your questions along the way were also super insightful. So thanks for asking those. If there's anyone in the audience that has a question for Kobe, feel free to use the chat or even raise your hand, and we can add you to the stage real quick. We'll give a few seconds for that. I don't know, Herman, if you had any questions that popped up as you saw this. You've got an interesting experience, Herman, because you've kind of learned how to use PowerSync yourself. You went through the steps yourself. I don't know if you've seen anything in Kobe's implementation that makes you think differently of what you've done in your clone app.
Yeah, Kobe has a bit of different approach on the models and where the tie in there to SQLite and PowerSync comes in. Yeah, just different, also valid. So yeah, it just seeing this end to end being presented by somebody, it just makes it seem easy. But what I can attest from going through the documentation without having somebody to talk me through it. So going from scratch, starting on the Trello clone app, and it was my first experience with Supabase and PowerSync. It was actually easy. So it's not just when somebody talks you through it. I really found it easy to create my Supabase setup, to create a PowerSync setup, and get the first stuff going with that Hello World app. I think it was like half an hour or so, and everything was running end to end and all of that. So including downloads, which take a lot of time on my internet. So I'm impressed. Very nice, quick start technology for us who do not want to worry about the backend, as Tyler said, and as Philip, as you said. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's great to hear. Of course, that is the objective, to make it all smooth and easy. I see that Ben is typing in our stage chat. Ben will wait for you to finish typing, or if you want to ask the question by voice, you're welcome to. I think you can request to be a speaker if that works easier, but up to you. And if anyone else has other questions, yeah, feel free to add them to the chat. Nice. Okay, here we go from Ben. Kobe, could you could you say something about how to address column name mapping and handling custom data types?
I almost feel like Ben is our expert on this section. Because I think we just he's we're still, but basically if you've got custom types in Postgres, that is supported with PowerSync, but I don't I think it just turns them into text at this point. Yeah.
Mhm.
So this is like when you want to use, for example, PostGIS to support different geography data, that sort of thing. It'll currently turn it into text with PowerSync.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the case. I think in Ben's case, he had actually an array of custom data types. Yeah. But I believe he has actually got that working today. So
Oh, wow.
I know it's supported, but I do think we've got a bit of a gap in our docs on that, which we're going to plug ASAP for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like he says he has got it working. Okay, well, that's great. Yeah, thanks for those questions, Ben. Thanks for also Yuri commenting on how exciting this is and the possibilities it'll open for Flutter devs. Fantastic. Yeah, feel free to get more questions in as we go through. We'll try and address them at the end. I think we can give over to Herman, who has the unenviable task of condensing all of the hours of work into a 10-minute discussion on what you've done. But I'll give over to you.
Cool, thanks. Let me first kind of touch where I'm coming from. So I'm a massive fan of Flutter. I learned it by deciding to build an app and start a startup to build the app, and then use a total unknown technology for that. And that's where I started with Flutter. And it's the thing that really stands out to me is how productive Flutter is. And Philip, you mentioned in the beginning around the mental model of Flutter developers, the others that I've met over the last few years and work with as well. We like things that are productive, and it doesn't have to be easy, but it has to be the right tools. There's a reason why we're not struggling with NPM and JavaScript, because we're much more productive in Flutter, and we can really create amazing experiences for users with that. So I think that's a core part of understanding when you want to roll out technology to the Flutter community.
Mhm.
I think PowerSync is checking the boxes there. Yes, there's always things that can be improved, but I think from the start, as I mentioned, it was quite easy to onboard and get that going. I've used Firebase a lot, and in this startup, specifically the project there as well, we used that. particularly Firestore, which is also NoSQL. Personally, we wanted to use a structured SQL database, but there weren't really easy options. We didn't want to have our whole EC2 stack or something like that we must manage. So that's the one reason. The other thing why we went for Firebase is the SDK, the Flutter SDK for that is freely available. It's quite mature, and they promise caching or offline support, which in fact is just caching. It's not meant for offline first. It's not meant for persistent offline data at all. And we really found that extremely deficient in our use cases. So in the end, we have this whole complex thing where we use Hive, and I think a lot of people on this call, maybe also when that route started with Firestore SDK, ended up having to plug the offline holes themselves. But the caching and the NoSQL isn't just the only two things. The other thing, that's probably the biggest elephant in the room, is three-way syncing or 3+way syncing. And so our use case is very much, and this is the same why I found the Trello clone app a very interesting project, is two users can be working on the same record. So with the typical straightforward usage of a Firestore SDK, wherever puts their version of the truth to Firestore wins. So you don't have any proper syncing there. I've seen that with playing with PowerSync and Trello and multiple users editing things at the same time, I'm getting the results there that I'm expecting. So the way that syncing works is definitely much more efficient. And also the efficiency aspect where you can use the sync rules isn't just for security, it's also to reduce the amount of data going to the mobile app. So if you, in the situations where we're developing an app for offline first, you typically have very bad internet, data might be expensive, and you want to protect that. So let me show you a bit of, if I can just get my screen going, let me quickly show the app. I'm not going to go into so much code as Kirby, but this repo will be made available. We can probably share the URL. I think it's already publicly available since a bit earlier today. So it's a very basic Trello clone. You have workspaces. Within that, you have boards. If you go to a board, there are some lists there. You can move tickets around. Sometimes this, okay, there, it's working today on the simulator. You can move lists around as well. Let's get the click right. This is now demo blues. On my phone, this works very nicely, the drag and drop. Sometimes I misclick on the simulator, but at least I can move the cards. We'll do this just now on my phone. And you can add boards and add cards. The other interesting thing is that there's also members that you can add to a workspace, and then you have shared information between those members. So what I'm going to try, well, before I do more, I just want to show a bit around how I structure the app, since you kind of get an idea of the basics here, and you get the information in the card, and there's checklists and activities and comments. And
Oh, is everybody seeing the screen? I still haven't got the screen share, but is it displaying fine?
Yeah, I think it might be some folks might be able to see the screen and some might not. But yeah, I can also see it on my side, but I see that Matt can't see it. Not sure exactly what the issue is there, but we are recording this.
I'm turning off my video. It might be I do live in a village called Wilderness, and part of living there means the internet isn't always great.
Right.
Can you all see it now? That
Some of us can, some of us can't, Herman. So I think it could be some Discord infrastructure thing where, yeah. So I don't think there's anything.
I'm sure that's the
Yeah,
case. Yeah.
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 I don't think you can do anything about it, Herman. I think just continue for now. Yeah.
Can
Maybe Herman,
I?
just one last thing to do is to try and turn it on and off
Stop
again
it.
in the sense of
Yeah,
just
let's
doing
do
and then
that.
I know that we have Matt joining from I think New Zealand, where it must be very, very early. So if it can work for him, I know that that'll be great, but I don't know if this is actually working. I can see it again now.
Yeah, I
That
can see
makes
it. 5 a.m. Good morning.
Can you see it
Can
now,
you see
Tyler?
it, Tyler?
Yep. I do see it right
Okay.
now.
Okay. Maybe it
Perfect.
was just some Discord disconnect there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, but I think we've all probably played with Trello or similar tools. Just to show you a little bit around my app approach. So this is based on a Trello clone open source project, which in the README file I give attribution to that. And kind of inspired by them, I kept all of my data side the PowerSync integration and the Supabase integration in a separate library. So there's basically a data client. The data client has the necessary methods to work with the various use cases, data use cases of the app. The PowerSync here is very similar to what Kirby showed, that and using Supabase for the authentication and the uploading of data. Then I have my model classes, just a different model. So as you can see, it's quite a bigger domain than the chat app. So just not going to spend much time on this. Please have a look after the fact, but you'll see there's some indexes and some tables and schemas being defined here. And in each of the model classes, I have my from row. Where I went a bit of a different approach is around the data access patterns of the app. I've created these what I call repository classes. So the repository has access to the actual data client, some utility methods, and then this would have my create and get methods depending on what I need. Let me just there. I just want to highlight one or two interesting cases here. The watch is very similar to what Kirby has shown using that watch query. And then I mentioned a transaction. So all the cards can be archived in a list. And what that does is I get the right transaction and gives me that SQLite context back. And in here, I can do multiple other executions. So here I do a batch update of all the cards, setting them to be archived. And I do a touch on the particular list. And then when this is all done, that's the end of that closure that finishes the transaction. So it's quite straightforward to use the transactions in this way. In the code itself, this app code actually doesn't know anything about PowerSync or Supabase libraries. All it knows about is that abstracted data client, and then I can use that. So here there's for example, a service class that makes use of the data client and then combines that in various ways, or maybe shows pop-ups or things like that. So translate it to the what's needed by the views. Sorry, I'm just aware of time. I can try and attempt a quick real-time interaction between my phone, running it on my phone and running it on a simulator if there's still some time, or otherwise I can just leave
I
it to
think
you
go
to play
ahead,
with the
Herman.
repo.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would love to see that.
Okay, let me, this is finicky, this getting it streaming in this manner. I figured out a way, so let me just start it up on my phone and then switch there again. And where is the... it's just starting up. Why is it showing blank on the screen? Okay, let me just check. Why is this showing blank? It's supposed to show the app.
Yeah, it is offline
There it's
functionality.
okay.
There we go. But it's one of those things that's
There we go.
specifically difficult to demo since everything's
So
online.
I figured out how to screen share via my cable because I'm hoping to show offline. And I can't screen share over Wi-Fi from my phone because then offline I can't demo offline mode.
Right.
Anyway, so this is, just to come back here, this is a user T6, and on my phone I must remember I can't use that's user T5. So this is different users. So you'll see I created a shared workspace. The sync rules allow both these users to see that workspace, and this one is a unshared workspace. So I can, if I now add a board, and I put it in the shared workspace level, then you'll see it's also on this one. So this is that live update that Kirby mentioned between two users. And then if I go here, let's go to transaction service on both. And then if I now, the card updates, I'm not using a watch query yet. There's still some to-dos in the app. So if I drop this, I'm not going to see an update on the other side because I don't have a stream builder on the Flutter side yet for cards. However, if I go out and in, then it shows the latest data because it did a fetch again. But I do have a stream listener on the lists and on the boards and on the workspaces. So if I now drag this list to that side, then why didn't? I dropped the thing before it updated. There you see now it shifts.
Wow.
Because I moved the in progress to the other side as well. So yeah, that's just a real-time use case. And now the trick. This didn't always pan out when I tried earlier today, but let's try. I'm going into airplane mode, which now in theory puts my phone into offline.
You also
However,
need to turn off Wi-Fi or no?
No, I think there's something with this style of sharing over a cable. It shows the Wi-Fi icon. The icon, you can ignore the icon. It's offline, but I think it shows the Wi-Fi icon. You can't get rid of it. It's an Apple thing, I think.
That icon there, though, is the connection state from PowerSync. Dropped the app now. My Xcode disconnected now.
You
because
lost.
It's offline. Yeah. Okay, that didn't pan out.
Yeah, I like Android for that. With Android you can go into airplane mode pretty easily.
I was worried about having an emulator and a Discord stage running on my machine. The emulator is quite heavy on the juice. Okay, my Xcode disconnected now, and then the app crashed because I ran it from Xcode directly, the Apple version, and it syncs over Wi-Fi. Okay, sorry. Earlier today, I got it that it worked via USB and not Wi-Fi, the Xcode connectivity, and then I could go to offline mode. Anyway, what I wanted to show, offline mode, you can still edit, you can go on, everything works, and then it syncs as the moment you're going online again. That's all I have time for, but play with this. You'll see there is that little icon in the corner of the app itself that shows whether it's connected or not. So you can keep an eye on that. I still have things I want to do in there, like actually allowing you to manually put the app in offline first mode. So to say stop all updates, So you can try
Mm.
more easily to play. You don't have to worry about how to do it on a simulator or emulator or on your device.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a good
But
idea.
yeah, I mean, I found it quite easy getting it going. The way I like working and layering apps and fitting it in with that. There's some things I would like to do in the demo app itself, better state management and so on. But yeah, it works smoothly with PowerSync and with Supabase. By the way, Tyler, I
And
love Supabase. First time I used it, very nice
Oh, thank
technology.
you. Means a lot. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for the compliment. I'll pass it on to the team.
Great. Yeah,
Cool.
thank you very much, Herman. Very happy to have you here showcasing your work. Grateful for it as well. If there are any other questions for Herman, we can quickly take them. We have had maybe a few people drop off since I think we've gone just over the top of the hour. So I don't know if there are any questions, but we'll kind of give a few seconds for any of those to come back. While we
Herman,
wait,
oh,
yeah, go ahead.
so one short question. The use of transactions, that was, for example, like archiving a whole list. You either want that to succeed in a batch or not,
Oh,
right? Is that the use case? Okay.
yeah. That was the use case. So either the whole archiving. Oh, I forgot to show that in the app. What it does is it tells you so many archived, or it fails everything. So if one of them gives a problem, then nothing is transitioned. Yeah, that was the
Oh.
use case there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, great. Yeah, we're not seeing any other questions come in, but yeah, thank you to everyone that attended, and thank you, Tyler, for making the time, and Herman, for you as well, showing us your handiwork. Appreciate that. Yeah, we will be posting updates on the Discord as we carry on. We've got the Flutter crew here with us today, but there's some news about React Native that'll drop soon. And all of that stuff will
Nice.
be on the Discord first. So thanks everyone for attending. Have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in this world, and all the best.